So this gentleman has got pleats in his trousers, and you know they're giving this really buffy effect here, which is not nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove those pleats, and I'll show you how I do that in the next step of the video. Okay, so what we're going to do is also, because the legs are a bit baggy, I'm going to take a little bit extra out so that they're more, you know, just taken in a little bit more. So we'll get rid of that and take them in all the way through.
The first step is to transfer the pin measurements to a piece of paper, and you recall on the video how I pinned around that thigh area, because you know, obviously with the pleats there you've got that excess fabric, and that means that, you know, the leg from the thigh down is going to be quite wide, and in particular on the front panel. So I'm just measuring down so that I know how much I need to take it in. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this in all the way down to the very bottom of the hem, to get rid of all of that excess. So just a couple of things with men's suit trousers or good trousers. Usually they're lined, and that lining is on the front panel only, and generally goes down to the knee area. And you'll also have a pocket, so there's a little bit in your way to get to the pleats. But before you do that, there is more than likely going to be a belt loop. So unpick the belt loop, start at the top first and release that. Be very careful and mindful of the fabric underneath, and then release the belt loop from the band, and that will just open up the band a little bit for you. Before we turn it inside out, just make sure that you've got enough unpicked at the band area, so that when you take in that excess in the pleat, that there's enough of the fabric that you've got access and it's not attached to the band. And then what we're going to do is we're going to now turn this whole thing inside out. So pull both legs through, and then pop your hand up into the lining, and then it's almost like a bit like a sausage really. Pull it back through so that you are just working on the fashion fabric. If you're working on good suit trousers, 99.9% of the time there's going to be a permanently pressed fold down the centre front. So if you place that fold right on the edge, you can pin from the top to the bottom before you actually do your marking. The amount that's been taken in at the very top where the band is should be the total amount of the pleats. So if you measure the amount of the pleats, that's how much you should have pinned where you've got it from the fold to your pin. And then use your tailor's pencil and just pop a little dot there. whenever you're doing something like this where you're coming in, for example, down the centre front, a lot of people would just leave the hem how it is and just sew straight through. I always believe that wherever you've got a hem, you should unpick it, so that when you take something in, you take it in all the way through to the raw edge or to the overlock, and then you can fold that hem back up again. Now that's going to give you a professional finish and a nice finish as against just going straight through and folding it to the side. Before I stitch it, I always like to just turn it back on itself so I can have a look and make sure that how I've pinned it is accurate, in particular at the very top. Sometimes the pleats can be very close to the zip area, so you want to make sure that it doesn't come, say for example, straight up the centre front and then veer across to the zip area because of the way they put the pleats. You want to make sure that it comes up through the centre front all the way to the band. I'm now just placing dots all the way down, and in particular through to the end of the hem, and then after that I'm going to stitch it. So it's been stitched from the top all the way through to the hem, and what I want to do is, before I do anything else, I want to turn that in the right way and just make sure that I'm happy with the way it's stitched. So I'm really happy with that. Now what I want to do is turn it back inside out, and I'm going to overlock off the excess, because to leave a large seam allowance, in my opinion, particularly when you're doing something like this, is not a good idea. So what I'm going to do is just overlock that off, and there it is there, it's done. Make sure that the stitch width on your overlocker is wide so that it's not a very close overlock. And when you've done that, turn it back the right way and then iron that seam flat. The other thing we want to do is, of course, the lining is going to be too big, so you need to take the lining in. Now, obviously, you don't want to leave a seam just there all by itself, particularly on suit trousers. So what we're going to do is place that seam right on the edge, and this is where you will stitch straight through for the hem because it's necessary so that it sits correctly. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to pin tuck it. You know how you see some people, they want to keep a permanently pressed lining down the centre front of their trousers, and what they do is they just go down and stitch right on the very edge so that they've got that permanent crease all the way down the centre front. So that's what we're going to do to hide the join that we've created down the centre front. Now obviously it's important to have that ironed flat first so that there's no sort of extra fold in there, I guess you could say. And as you're stitching, I just go very slowly, and I make sure kind of move it with my fingers and just make sure that I've got that seam allowance right on the very edge, and that way it's going to be almost invisible. People are not going to notice that unless they get down and have a really good look. So this is how you can hide that seam allowance. So there's the final product, and you can see that pin tucking down the center front, how that hides the seam. I've joined it at the band, put the belt loops back on, and as I said, that's stitched all the way through the hem as well. And now I'm going to get the client to try it on, and you can see the difference. For him, he was really happy because he just didn't like all of that fabric at the very front. Happy altering!